Hello and welcome to Football Night in New York, Living Room Edition. I'm Jeane Coakley alongside Ralph Vacchiano and Jonas Schwartz. And guys, the 2020 draft in the books. And Ralph, let's start with you. What was the biggest surprise that the Giants did?
Well, to me, it was more a surprise about what they didn't do. They didn't take a center, and I thought for sure they were going to take one. I thought it would come as early as the second round, if not then the third round. But in the third round, they took a developmental tackle instead of guys like Wisconsin center Tyler Biadasz, Washington center Nick Harris, guys they could have even gotten in the fourth round as well. They focused so much on rebuilding this offensive line, yet they've really left a hole in the middle. Spencer Pulley is a good fill-in guy. Their starter from last year, John Halapio, is coming back from a torn Achilles that he suffered in December. They've got a real question mark there, not only for this year, but for the future, and they just haven't addressed it.
You know, I'll go with just the top pick, Andrew Thomas at 4, just because, you know, one, they didn't trade down and take him, and a lot of people had him as their 4th best tackle in the draft. Now, out of those big 4, now I understand that a bunch of different teams had a bunch of different viewpoints on the tackles, but I just thought was sort of surprised that the Giants were going to stay at 4. I thought they were always going to go with Jedrick Wills because of the relationship between Joe Judge and Nick Saban. That relationship may have worked against Wills in the end, or even Tristan Wirfs from Iowa. I was surprised they went with Thomas staying there. Doesn't mean he won't be good, but it's surprising.
All right, Jonas, I know you were very happy with Joe Douglas's first draft as the Jets GM, but what surprised you the most?
Oh, it had to be taking the quarterback in the 4th round. I mean, listen, I understand you always need to have quarterbacks. I get it. But I was surprised to see the Jets, who have so many needs. And I understand Joe Douglas wants to stay true to his draft board, Ralph. But the Jets have so many needs to take a guy who's not going to really be able to play for a year or two at best, and really who you hope never plays, really surprised me, especially when you still had needs at wide receiver and cornerback. And you know what, when you talk about wide receiver, Ralph, I thought they were going to take another wide receiver. I thought they needed to, as happy as I am how they got Denzel Mims.
Yeah, I'm with you on that exactly, Jonas. I really thought they would double up on wide receiver, and I thought that was the spot to do it. It was such a deep class. We've heard about it for months, really, about how there could be 30 guys that could have grades in the first 3 rounds. So taking another one wasn't crazy. I get the quarterback like you do. I understand the philosophy teams, the Eagles, where Joe Douglas came from. They like to have kind of a quarterback factory. Always have that young developmental guy that either can be an emergency backup, a future backup, maybe a trade chip. Joe Douglas pointed out that the Jets learned a bad lesson last year when they didn't have a good young quarterback. Luke Falk just wasn't ready, and it torched their season early on. You can't argue with the quarterback. The scouts seem to love James Morgan, but yeah, to me, using a 4th rounder on a player that best case scenario never steps on the field, that's a waste for a team that had so many other needs.
Okay, Ralph, let's stick in the Jets quarterback room and talk about Sam Darnold, because he's got more weapons and he has an offensive line for the most part now. How complete is this Jets offense?
You know, I think it's pretty complete on the surface, and by that I mean the starting lineup. You know, he's got 3 good receivers, Jamison Crowder, Rashad Perryman, now Denzel Mims. He's got Le'Veon Bell in the backfield. It looks like a good starting 5 on the offensive line. And, you know, Ryan Griffin and a hopefully healthy Chris Herndon at tight end, that's a pretty good unit that Adam Gase can work with. But what worries me is peeling back one layer, there's no depth anywhere. Maybe a little on the offensive line, but certainly not a receiver. I don't know who their 4th receiver will be. They've now got a rookie backing up Le'Veon Bell. Tight end beyond Griffin, and again, we kind of heard him to be healthy. There's not a lot there. So the concern to me is, while it's complete on the surface, you know injuries will happen, and when they do, the Jets could find themselves in a bit of trouble.
And, you know, I think it's interesting because I do think it's complete as well, but if 2 things happen, and it comes right off the draft, it's complete if Denzel Mims and Mekhi Becton are exactly as the Jets project them to be, which is big-time players. Because if they're not, then, boy, it's not complete. Now, I think they will, and I like the picks. And I think Becton will be an anchor at left tackle for a decade, and I think he's going to dominate. I loved it. And I think trading down and get Mims was brilliant. But if those guys are not what we all think they are, well, the Jets still have some of the same problems they had last year when it comes to the offensive line and wide receiver because of what you talked about, Ralph. There isn't a ton of depth there. They're still trying to build up the depth. It's one of the main goals of Joe Douglas's offseason. So Mims better be impact player, and you know what? Becton better be a real dominant left tackle.
All right, one thing we can all agree on is that it's an upgrade from last season's offense.
No doubt. Has to be.
All right, time for What Are the Odds? And Jonas, let's stick with Sam Darnold in this offense. Over under, Sam Darnold throws for 3,559.5 passing yards this season.
I was going to go 3,560 yards. How'd you know? I'm going over pretty much for this simple reason. The man had mono last year and played behind one of the worst offensive lines we've ever seen when it comes to run blocking and pass blocking, and he didn't have a lot of wide receivers. Now he's got more weapons, a better offensive line, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's not getting mono. So over.
Yeah, I think that's a good place. That's a good way to place your bets. All right, and Ralph, over under, Sam Darnold throws 22.5 touchdowns next season.
I am definitely going over. That is a surprisingly low number to me. He had 19 touchdowns last year. Again, missing 3 games, dealing with mono for most of the season, also having a pretty atrocious offense for most of the year. And we've seen one thing from the Adam Gase offense. We know he's not relying on the running backs. He's relying on Sam Darnold. It's a passing offense, and they expect a lot from him. So I would be surprised if he's anywhere close to that over-under number. I think he's going to clear it with a lot of room to spare.
I still can't believe Sam Darnold had mono last year. Like, what universe do we live in? All right, and speaking of odds, how about the Jets' third-round pick? This is a guy who beat the odds and everything to be in the NFL. I caught up with Ashtyn Davis the day he was drafted. Ashtyn Davis, a New York Jet. How's that feel? How's that sound?
Still getting used to it. Still fresh, but definitely surreal and a dream come true for sure.
What was it like getting that phone call?
I didn't expect my heart to start racing like it did, but it was certainly something that was exciting. And I don't know, I felt like it was never going to come. Every pick seemed longer than the previous one. So I was excited. I can't even describe it.
What do you know about the New York Jets?
I know they got 2 really good safeties, and I'm excited to learn behind them and kind of soak up all the knowledge that's around me in that room and just try to be the best player I can be.
Why did you choose football over track? Because you were obviously very successful in track.
I don't know. I've always been passionate about football. The team aspect, just everything about it. My last game in high school, I thought was my last game ever, and it hit me so emotionally. And I never wanted that. I want to chase that feeling as long as I can. So I fought my way back onto the football field, and I'm trying to stay here as long as possible.
Well, congratulations, Ashtyn.
Very much. Thanks for having me.
Jonas, you've got to be excited to hear from a kid like Davis. This is a kid that's going to, I think, really bring something to this Jets defense. So with that, grade the Jets draft.
I'm going to go A-, and I'll tell you why. The only pick that I really didn't like, we talked about already, was taking a backup quarterback or a quarterback project in the 4th round, only because you have so many needs. I like the Becton pick. I love trading down to get Denzel Mims, acquire more picks. I like Bryce Hall later on in the draft. I think he will be a big-time cornerback for the Jets down the road. Jamar Zuniga, I think, has some upside as a pass rusher without question. So I like the draft in total, and I really think Mims and Becton are going to make this outstanding, as well as Davis, which gives them so much flexibility defensively and also flexibility contractually with Marcus May coming up soon.
All right, Ralph, now I'm going to ask about the Giants. Grade the Giants draft.
I gave them a solid B, and I don't really have any problems with their draft philosophy overall. I like that Dave Gettleman finally focused on the offensive line after talking about it for so many years. I guess my only issues are the things that they didn't do. No center was a bit surprising. They still have a needed pass rusher, so no edge rusher was a bit surprising. And when you look at it overall, it's really more of a draft about the future. Other than their first pick, Andrew Thomas, their second pick, safety Xavier McKinney, you're not going to find a lot of guys who can help right now. They're more for down the line. That's a bit of a gamble for a general manager on the hot seat, but overall, I thought they did a reasonably good job.
All right, well, I'm going to grade this edition of Football Night in New York, Living Room Edition, A+. For Jeane Coakley, he's Jonas Schwartz, that's Ralph Vacchiano. We will see you here next Friday.